we're not going to be going into all of the details today. First thing I wanted to say about politeness levels is that you don't need to master politeness levels. There are some safety nets that you can learn. So in case you're not really sure what to do, there are ways to be safe speaking Korean, having the appropriate amount of politeness, but not being overly polite, that you can learn without learning every single detail and mastering it. In case you don't already know this, the way that you speak with someone completely depends on several things, but those things are all related to social hierarchy. The way that you talk to someone in Korean will always depend on your social hierarchy. What's your relationship to that person? And the first thing you can look at is someone's age. If you are, say you're 15, right? And you're walking down the street and you see your teacher. So your teacher is, let's say 35, your teacher's 35, okay? The way you talk to that teacher is going to be different because they are older than you. It's going to be different than how you would talk to someone else who's in your class who's also 15. The next thing that matters, your relationship with that person. For example, if they're your mom, you know, you're 15, but your mom is 35. It doesn't matter your mom's age. Without regards to age, your relationship to that person can also be important. For example, boyfriend or girlfriend. If you're dating someone who's a little bit older than you, you don't have to be extra polite to that person. You see, the point of Korean politeness levels is that the idea is that people are not always at an equal level. So, do you see somebody as being higher than you, someone you should respect, a teacher, someone who's older than you, someone who has more experience, someone who's not related to you, a stranger? Or do you see someone as being lower than you socially, such as a classmate, a little kid, an animal, an employee of yours, and you're a boss? In English, that doesn't matter. You might feel that a person is worthy of respect, but you are not going to talk so differently to them as you would have to in Korean. For example, I'm walking down the street and I run into Hugh Jackman. I'm not going to have to speak politely to him more than I would have to speak to any other stranger who I see. I would say, oh, hey, nice to see you in the area, Hugh. In Korean, no, that person is much older than you. That person is someone you don't have a good relationship. You don't know. You don't have any relationship with them. You're not dating him. You have to be more polite because in that social situation, that person is much higher than you. So pay attention to a person's social hierarchy whenever you're talking with them. Next thing is the workplace. If you've ever worked in a company, so if you've had a job and a customer asks you a question, you're not going to just say, yeah, sure, bro, no problem. Usually you be polite to them. You're not going to swear at the customer, right? You're not going to use slang with the customer. Well, you shouldn't, especially at a professional company, right? Even though you're the business and they're the customer is higher than you. When you're working for a client, are you an equal with the client in Korea? No, the client is higher than you, so they have to get more respect. So if you're meeting with a teacher and the teacher is obviously older than you, not related to you, and although it's not work, it's a professional situation, anything that's professional, you're gonna be talking really respectfully to that teacher. The teacher knows you, well, you're younger than me, you're my student. The teacher's going to also talk a bit down to the students. Maybe not be rude, but not try to be extra polite. I don't know if you've heard these terms before. 선배 and 후배. There aren't really translations for these words in English, so I'm just writing senior and junior in quotes. 선배 is if you're in the workplace and you've been working at the company for 10 years, a new guy comes in and he's 36. In this situation, in the workplace, he is your junior, 후배. So this junior senior thing is whoever's been there longer is the senior and whoever has been there less is a junior. And one more thing that can influence how you speak to somebody, that is when you're in a one-on-one situation. This is only sometimes. This is really just if you have permission. And this really applies to people who are learning Korean more than it applies to native Koreans. If you're learning Korean and you're talking with a Korean person, they are native Korean and they might feel if you're younger than them and they're older, and they might want to be friendly with you. So they might want to use slang Korean with you and then they want you to use slang Korean with them. They want to be friends with you. They know you're a foreigner. They know you're not a Korean. In this situation, older Koreans might give you permission to speak casually with them. This is not something that they do so much with native Koreans. It's a different process, how native Koreans will change the way they're speaking. But if you're not a native Korean and you're talking with a native Korean and you become friends with them, notice I didn't say relationship here depends on being friends so much. But if you get permission from them, and this happens a lot if you're not a Korean. Older Korean people I meet would say, hey, Billy, can we just speak 한말? Can we just use casual Korean to each other? Even though they would be like 35 and I was like 20. But that is only in that one-on-one situation. If we then met his parents, then I would have to go back to speaking politely to him in front of his parents, because it would kind of seem rude if there's two people and the really younger person is speaking down to someone who's much older without any other reason. So you have to adjust based on the situation. And like I said, this is only sometimes. I said that the way you talk will depend on social hierarchy. What that will change is the grammar. It will change the conjugation of verbs. So whether you use the yo form or the nida form or whatever, and it'll also even change nouns that you use. And just overall, how do you put your sentences together? Are you using every correct particle, or are you just using slang expression? And of course, expressions. You're not going to be swearing if you wouldn't be allowed to speak down to that person. If you're talking to someone who looks to be your same age, you can ask them their name. 이름이 뭐예요? But if you're talking with somebody in a professional situation and they're a little bit older than you cannot say 이름이 뭐예요 to someone who's much older than you. It will sound not only awkward, but it'll sound rude, because this type of speaking assumes you're on the same level. Instead, you'd have to ask 성함이 어떻게 되세요? We're not going to be talking about in detail today, but I'm just illustrating for you that you do have to talk differently depending on who you're talking with. In Korean, there's definitely at least 3 major types of general ways that you would speak with someone based on your relationship. One would be 반말, and this would be whenever you are equal to or when you are talking down to someone. So it's really casual. A next one would be 존댓말, which means honorifics or polite. And this is when you're talking up to somebody. And then the third kind is plain. And this is what's used in like newspapers and essays and journals. These are the 3 main ways that you would speak to someone in Korean. Within 반말, there are many levels. Within 존댓말, there are many levels of 존댓말, such as the yo form. There might be the nida form. There might be using honorifics, humble speech. And then there's plain form, which is simply just the plain form. If you don't know who you're talking with, there's a different style of speech that you use all entirely. Today, if you're going to learn one, this one will save you. If you do not know how you should talk with someone, you meet someone for the first time, you're in a business situation, you're talking with your friend, if you don't know how you should talk with someone, at least be safe. You can fall back on 존댓말 every time. So fall back on 존댓말. 반말 is casual speech. So when can you use casual speech? You can use it with your close friends. Pay attention to their age though. If this is a friend who you've known since you're a child, yeah, you can probably safely use this with them. It doesn't matter if they're older than you. If they're kind of a close friend, like you've known them since high school, be careful. If they're much older than you, you might still not use casual speech with them. It depends on your relationship. I have some Korean friends who I don't use casual speech with, even though I feel pretty close with them. Like someone who I've met and someone who I've known for a couple of years. I feel like, oh, they're cool. Like they're my friend. I could ask them to hang out, but I still wouldn't want to use casual speech with them, and they're not the same age as me. So age is important too, but also how close are you with that person? Boyfriend, girlfriend, family, small kids. You don't have to use polite speech with small kids. That's on a case-by-case basis. I'd say in general, though, you're okay using casual speech to small kids and animals. This is where you have to. If you are talking Korean to an animal, you have to use casual speech with an animal, 100%. If you are walking and you see someone's pet dog, then you look down at the dog, you say, 안녕하세요. Then you look at the person, you say, 안녕하세요. You know what they're gonna think? Am I the dog? Is that what I am to you? They'll feel like, why are you talking so polite to my dog and then the same politeness to me? Only just say 안녕, which is casual. And then other thing would be talking with yourself. If you're meeting with an older acquaintance and then suddenly you feel this cold breeze come by, you're not going to say, oh, 추워요, because you're talking to yourself. There is no other person. You don't have to talk up. You don't have to talk down to anyone. You need to be casual. So you can either speak using plain form or you can talk down to yourself using casual speech. And of course, as I mentioned, if you have permission, if someone tells you, please speak casually to me, what does that mean if you're speaking in 반말? Well, one thing is you're not using the yo form. So no yo. You do not use the yo form. Instead of 저는, you can use 나. So if you wanted to say, I like it, normally we would say, 저는 좋아해요. If you want to make this in casual speech, so you're talking with your close friend, you change 저 to 나, but then you also have to change the ending. 나는 좋아해. Don't mix those. Make sure if you're using 저는 that you have a yo at the end. And if you have 나는, do not use a yo at the end. There's also different grammar you might use. For example, to say with, 와 or 과, with that person. 그 사람과, 과 after a consonant, and 와 after a vowel. But if you're not speaking formally, if you're just speaking casually, they don't do that. Instead, you'll use 이랑. And it's 이랑 after a consonant or just 랑 after a vowel. So you would say 그 사람이랑 instead of 그 사람과. The meaning is the exact same, but this is used whenever you're not speaking really politely. Skipping particles, kind of. If you're throwing out all of your particles, it can sound like you're purposely trying to be slangy, like you're purposely trying to speak casually. Removing a lot of your particles is not a requirement to speak 반말, but it's kind of a feature, so you'll see it a lot. Another thing is instead of 에게, which means to, like to a person, 그 사람에게 선물 줬어요. I gave a present to that person. Koreans would say 한테, which is just pronounced as 안테. But 그 사람한테 is the exact same meaning as 그 사람에게. But if you're speaking casually, they would never say 완과 or 에게. They would only use these other versions of it, which sound a little more smooth. This doesn't mean that if you see these, it's casual. These are also used in regular speech too, but they're not formal. But they are okay in most regular situations, even if it's not casual. It's just not formal anymore. But there are some things you need to avoid in 반말. So like I said, if you're talking with a close friend, then you might think, oh, I can use 반말 because we're close friends. I mean, he's a little older than me. Okay, so I'm just gonna say no to you. For you, no. They use it in dramas, they use it in songs. This is actually specifically talking down to someone a little bit more. Like, this person is a little bit lower than me. Or I really don't care to be polite to this person at all. This isn't saying that no is always rude, but if you're not really close with that person, do not use no. You can use no to, your boyfriend or girlfriend. You can use no to your sibling. You can use no to close friend, really close friend. And if the friend is younger than you. Another thing, 이다 normally for to be becomes 이에요 or 예요. So 이에요 after a consonant and 예요 after a vowel. In casual speech, it'll become 이야, which is 이야 after a consonant or just 야 after a vowel. 나는 미국인이야. You see the ya here, so people think, oh, the ya is part of 반말. It's okay. Okay, normally using this ya ending is okay. If you're speaking 반말, 나는 미국인이야. I'm an American. But you cannot say ya by itself. This is a lower form of 반말 that can sound rude. If you shout out to someone, and I'm sure you've seen this in a drama if you watch dramas, ya, yeah, hey, this is 100% talking down to somebody. Yeah, no, hey, you. It's really rude. With your really close friends, you sure. Feel free to use this with your really close friends who are the same age as you. Say, yeah, like, hey, what are you doing? Your boyfriend, girlfriend, that's okay. Do not use this when speaking regular casual speech. So you have a friend named Charsu. I don't care, I'm putting Charsu's name in red. Die, Charsu. Okay, so you're not supposed to write people's names in red. Call out someone's name. You're like, hey, Charsu, Charsu야, if you're calling it to someone. Or 희진아, if their name ends in a vowel, then you attach ya. If their name ends in a consonant, it's 아. This is when you're calling out to someone. Okay, so that's all about 반말. So let's go on to 존댓말. 존댓말 means polite speech. This is the general way that you should speak with Koreans in every other situation. 존댓말 also has levels in it. It has a generic 존댓말, which you'll hear used all the time, which is 요. So like 좋아해요. Another level would be 니다. So that would be something like 좋아합니다. Another level, and this is different. This isn't just going up and making it more polite. They're just different situations when you use it. Another one is honorifics. This would be using 시 or using like 세요, like 안녕하세요. And this is a piece of 존댓말. It's not just getting more polite or more polite. This is a different piece of it. Speaking politely like with 존댓말 is the safest way to speak Korean. And if you use 존댓말, you're not going to accidentally be rude. The worst thing that would happen if you use 존댓말 when you're not supposed to is your best friend will tell you, stop speaking to me in 존댓말. It sounds awkward. And you will get away with pretty much any situation if you stick to using 존댓말. One thing about that you'll probably hear often is putting 시 after a person's name. If you want to call out to someone, you have to use a title. If they're your teacher, 선생님, which literally just means teacher. If they're your boss, you can call out to them with 사장님, which means boss. And another title that you could use is 씨, which just means Mr. or Mrs. If you wanted to be specific, say you see a bunch of teachers walking, and I want Billy. Hey, Billy. In English, you would say, oh, Mr. Billy, Mr. Go or whatever. But in Korean, you would say 빌리 선생님. So it's the person's name, then the title. And if you don't have a title, you can just use 씨, 철수 씨, Mr. 철수, 영희 씨, Mrs. 영희. So there's many titles in Korean. Other things that are titles that you might not think were titles would be something like 오빠 is an older brother or an older male friend. Or 형 if you're a guy. 누나, 언니. Also, you could say 오빠, if you're speaking 반말 too. But the feature of 존댓말 is you have to use a title when you call out to someone. Another thing is to make sure that you're using 저 and not 나. If you use 나, it's automatically not 존댓말, with a few exceptions. 저 is actually not a regular polite word. What it actually is, it's a humble noun. So you're talking up to somebody by actually lowering yourself. 저 is kind of like saying little old me, talking up to you. I'm showing my humility by using 저. And 나 is just, we are on a level playing field, or I'm talking down to you. If you're not sure, should I use 니다 or 요? If you're in a business or formal situation, end your sentences with the 니다 form. Otherwise, use the 요 form. How do you get to where you can speak more casually with someone? If you're talking with somebody and you feel like you're getting close to them, so you feel like you're becoming a good friend with them, but you're still speaking 존댓말, you're still speaking very politely, but you want to relax, you want to just use slang, you want to swear, you want to say 나, you want to stop adding the 요 at the end, right? You want to get more comfortable together. One way is you can say, if you're in a group, 우리 말, which is our words, 놓을까? 우리 말 놓을까? 놓다 means to put down or lower. So should we lower our speech? Another way you can do it is 말 편하게 해도 될까요? 편하게 just means comfortably. And then 해도, even if we do, 될까요? Would it be okay? 말, our words. Would it be okay if we do, here it's speak, is it okay even if we comfortably speak? And by comfortably, it means lowering our speech. 반가워요 is a casual way, it's a friendly way to say nice to meet you. If you're meeting someone in a formal situation, you're meeting your teacher, you're meeting someone older, like an older client, 반갑습니다, nice to meet you. But you might hear people say on the first meeting, the first time you meet someone, 반가워, nice to meet you. This is very casual. This would be what you can say, like I said, to a small kid or an animal. Like, you're shaking someone's pet dog's hand. You can't use casual speech when you're meeting someone for the first time. Except, of course, for the situations I mentioned. You do not use casual speech when you're meeting someone for the first time. You can't say, oh, 나는 blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter if they're your same age and younger. Like I said, age is important, but other factors can be more important. You have no relationship with this person. You cannot speak 나. You cannot drop the 요 at the end. So this is honorifics. There's two other pieces in 존댓말. And one of them is 높임말, and the other one is 낮춤말, humble speech. If you're talking about someone who is a higher level than you, doesn't matter who you're talking to, whoever you're talking about is a higher level than you. Then you would use honorifics when describing that person or talking about that person. But like say you're talking about your teacher. 선생님이, you could just say, 선생님이 누구예요? So who is the teacher? But you want to be honorific toward the teacher. The teacher is definitely up here. If you're asking this sentence, who's the teacher, to someone who's at a similar level than you, like maybe an acquaintance, you could use 누구예요. Or if you're asking it to a friend, close friend or someone lower, you say 누구야. But you want to be polite to the teacher, even though you're not being extra polite to your friend. So you would use honorifics. 선생님이 누구셔. So you have a honorific ending that's in 반말. You're only talking up about the teacher, but the person you're talking with stays the same. But like I said, we're not going to go into detail about this because it's a huge topic that would take all of 2 hours to cover. Right now, I'm just going to do quick detail. So that would be changing the verb ending. You remove the 타 at the end of a verb and you replace it with 시, and then you conjugate it. So that would become in the 요 form, 세요. Without the 요, it would become 셔, 쉽니다 if you're doing the 니다 form. Also, some verbs will change. So the regular verb 있다, to exist, when you're talking about a teacher, like a teacher is in his room right now, you wouldn't use 있어요 in the room, you would use 계세요. It's the exact same meaning as this, but it's an honorific for talking about the teacher. So if you were talking with your friend about a teacher, so you're using 반말, 계셔. And there's other verbs that will change. There's about 4 or 5. It's not like you have to learn all new verbs for every verb. The other one is 낮춤말. 낮춤말 is humble speech. If you search humble or honorifics, you'll find 2 videos on my channel. 낮춤말 is speaking about a person by putting yourself down. Honorifics would be saying, oh, this person's higher than me, so I'm going to speak politely about them. Humble speech is saying this person's higher than me, so I'm going to speak down about myself. I'm going to lower myself, lower my own status in the way that I talk. And humble speech, there's only 2 verbs you have to learn, 2. And like a couple nouns, you can use 저. 저 is a piece of humble speech. And we're not going to go into this again because I've already made a video that goes into it better than I could do today. I just kind of wanted to point out that it's there. The final thing is plain form. Now, I mentioned that 반말 is if you're talking, slightly down to someone. And 존댓말 is if you're speaking kind of at least a little bit up to them, so you're being polite. Plain form is when you're talking with someone who you don't know. An example of when this would be used is newspaper, articles, essays. If you're writing in a journal, you're writing to yourself, or you don't know who's reading it. Any written form of Korean, if it stays written and it's not someone speaking something, we'll use the plain form. There's no intended audience. If you have an intended audience, you cannot use the plain form. You cannot speak to somebody out loud using the plain form. It sounds rude. Something else that's a part of the plain form that you've probably seen is 당신. Do not say 당신. 당신 is an element of plain form. This means you do not know the person at all. You have zero information about the person. You don't know what they look like. You don't know how tall they are. You don't know what their name is, how old they are, their relationship to you, nothing. If you're making like a big poster, like you're making a big advertisement and it's going to be next to the freeway, 당신이 행복하세요? Are you happy? They don't know who this you is. You'll see 당신 used in advertising. You'll see 당신 used in newspapers and articles or journals or stuff like that from time to time, because it means you do not know who the other person is. So don't use 당신. Another thing is, this can be used in speech in one situation. Announcements. This would be 반말. If you hear someone say something out loud and they're using the plain form, it is a piece of 반말. It is a type of 반말. So they might say, oh, 춥다, really loud, to you, directed to you, not to themselves. 나 간다, I'm going. If you say something like that, 이거 먹는다, 내가 먹는다, I'm gonna eat this, that's an announcement. That's like you're announcing it to other people, and that's 반말. So you can only do that with close friends. So how to make the plain form? You take a verb stem and you attach 은다 if it ends in a vowel, and you attach 는다 if it ends in a consonant. So 가다, to go, becomes 간다. 먹다, which means to eat, becomes 먹는다. And if a verb ends in a lir, in this letter, you remove it. 살다, to live, just becomes 산다. Also, if you're using plain form, you cannot use 저. 저 is a piece of humble speech. If you are writing an essay, if you're writing a newspaper article, or you're writing in your journal, use 나. It is not rude in this situation. It is the only appropriate word to use for I, because you don't know who the person you're talking with. If you want to learn about these topics that I'm teaching today, I have videos about them all individually, but I don't have a summary about them, which is why I'm doing today's live class. 그럼 다음에 또 봐. Bye.